Hi, and welcome to the Zero Wasted Days podcast. I am Suzanne. I am a former C-level executive turned seven-figure serial entrepreneur. I'm a life-first business mentor, and I love helping women entrepreneurs merge strategy, feminine energetics, and embodiment to create outside-the-box business solutions and energetic solutions to their business challenges. I believe that it's time that we shift our perspective on business and life and see that our businesses are the means to us living life first. Reinventing the way that we go about our days as entrepreneurs, this podcast is designed for dream makers and action takers, and also those who value going slow and savoring the moments in between. This is the essence of living a zero wasted days life, and I welcome you to the Zero Wasted Days podcast. And welcome back to this week's episode of Zero Wasted Days. I am super excited to be welcoming, and I'm just thinking back, I think you might be the first person that I've interviewed on the continent. So I am welcoming Diana Davis here to Zero Wasted Days. She is, you'll hear, an American, but she's in Greece currently. So she is in Europe, which is really exciting because I think, and I'm going through everybody's names, I think most of the people have been elsewhere. I had one in Kathmandu the other day, a good friend of mine. But I am really excited to invite Diana here. Diana is an amazing business mentor. I'm going to let her tell you all about what she does and where she's come from and who she helps. But she really works mainly with creative entrepreneurs to help them ditch the hustle, which I know you guys are going to be au fait with in my world, work on landing dream clients and making more money. Welcome, Diana.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here and so cool we're on the same continent and this worked out.
I know, because I actually work with very few clients that live in Europe
Totally.
or so far on the podcast. So it's nice to go, oh my gosh, I don't have to wrap my head around so much of a time change or whatever. But I am excited to have this conversation. And like we were just talking about, just having a good soulful riff with somebody else that, you know, is in the same kind of world is just soul fuel for, I think, both of us.
Yeah, a soulful riff. I like that.
Yeah,
I'm gonna take that away.
So if I veer off I've got some questions. I always prepare some questions because I think there's nothing better than being a little bit prepared, but I may throw them all out and we can just see where our conversation takes us.
Let's detour. I'm here for it.
But one of the things that I would love to kick off with is I know you came from a corporate background. A lot of the women in my community and world come from corporate and have had a variety of different careers, working their way up through the ranks. And then something happens and they leave corporate, they have kids, they get laid off, they have a coming to Jesus moment. And from there on in, things change dramatically in their lives. And I'd love you to rewind a little. Tell us about how you personally left corporate. How I think it was probably, and I'm answering the question for you, I think it was the making of you. So I know it was the making of a lot of people and why it's led you to where you are today.
Absolutely. Hello, all. I'm so excited to be here. Yeah, I'm currently in Greece, which is so fun. And just to reflect for a second of 7 years ago, I would have never, ever thought I would be where I'm at right now, which is so cool. Even 2 years ago. So my corporate story is a little bit different than most people. Just to give everyone a little bit of background, I'm from Colorado. I'm a rancher's daughter. I grew up on a cattle ranch. My dad's a cowboy. That attributes a lot to who I am as a person. He quit his corporate job to fulfill his lifelong dream of being a rancher, even though it wasn't super lucrative. Like it was really choosing a different road that was really about fulfilling your passion and not fulfilling your bank account. Ranch life is no joke. I don't know if you're listening, come DM me on Instagram and let's talk about ranch life if you know about it.
Is it anything like Yellowstone?
Yes, actually. So my family is so particular about Westerns. Like we will watch them and my dad will be like, that's a different horse. And that's not how you buckle that saddle or that bridle or whatever. That's not how you train. And so he actually approved Yellowstone as doing a pretty good job.
Okay.
But Yellowstone, I did live in Bozeman, Montana, which is where it's technically based.
Yep.
It kind of ruined Bozeman. So I'm just going to, it's a double-edged sword. So Yellowstone's a loaded topic.
Maybe
Yeah,
not as many murders and
right,
maybe
not that.
quite explicit
Yes.
shagging around, but
Yeah, for sure. All the deceit. Oh my goodness.
you can
Yeah.
make this all about Yellowstone, actually.
Yeah, we'll just have a podcast about Yellowstone. It's going to be great. We can talk cattle. But yeah, so that kind of gave me a lot of permission to really do what I love and fulfill my passions. So I went to school in Montana for graphic design and photography. So I've always been a creative. I've always freelanced on the side, whether it be second shooting weddings or doing logos on the side. I worked for a food startup for a long time, did their package design, websites, email marketing, like cooking classes, sales, all of the above type of thing. Then a little part of my story is I was married, then I was divorced, and that led me to moving to New York City without a job or a plan. And that was truly like my soul's calling. So from there, I networked my way into getting a job in magazines, which was my corporate stint. But why I say it doesn't really look like a lot of people's is because it didn't include time off. It didn't include a 401k. It didn't include any perks because it was a permalance situation. So freelance, but you get 40 hours a week. So no paid time off, no 401k. Yeah. And I was making like 60K a year and in New York City, which is basically like not even livable wage. No. So it was corporate, but I wasn't one of these people who climbed the corporate ladder and was chief executive of XYZ and then quit their, that wasn't me. I was just wanted to be in New York, and I happened to get a job at one of the biggest magazine companies in the world. And there we were. And then I got laid off. So that was my story of getting pushed off the cliff. I knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur at some point, but I thought I was going to be 50. Maybe it was going to be like a different version of life for me. And at this time I was 27. Yep. And so when I got laid off, it was the biggest relief of my life. And I was very excited about it. And it was just the push off the cliff that I needed. And then I went into building my own photography and graphic design business in New York City. Then later, 3 years later, ended up business coaching for those same types of creative entrepreneurs.
Because you worked with some big brands and we were photographing like some really cool work. When I've dug through, I don't know, stuff that you've posted and whatnot, it seems that would, for some people, and I guess some people, that is the dream, like to be doing that kind of lifestyle brand work. Why the shift from that to mentorship?
Yeah, I'm going to say it was just very spiritual to be. I asked one time, I was walking along the East River in New York City near my apartment. And I was just like, I had put down photography, like pretty much definitely put down graphic design and was into this business coaching world that I never planned on ever. I never would have told you I was going to be a business coach. I did know, however, that I wanted to be known for entrepreneurship. There was a seed in me that was just knew that. Yeah. And so I remember asking like, God, what are we doing here? Am I on the right track? And it was just this download of everything you have done in your entire life has led you to this moment. Yeah. Like an entire photography career from 16 years old to 29, 30. That led you here. And that's what you're supposed to be doing now, is leading other people to be able to do what you did. So it's not like it wasn't a conscious decision to put down photography. It just happened. The pandemic also happened, and that allowed space for the first time for me to explore these other opportunities and just check in with myself. And so that was where the shift happened, and it just did.
And clearly moving from photography into mentorship has helped facilitate your current existence, which is largely digital nomad. Can you tell me more about how you are, like, for me, I'm like, you're living the zero wasted days life, creating the business that gives you the means to live the life that you want. And I would love you to tell us what how many months, years have you been on the road?
Almost a year. It'll be a year, June 5th. Yeah.
So I know that there's always people that are like, oh my gosh, that sounds amazing. And then there's people that are sitting at home with 3 kids and they're like, I'd love to pull the plug and do the trip around Australia or do the caravan across the US or homeschool my kids or make that like real leapy thing. Obviously, like you said, like those stepping stones, like it was leading you to where you needed to be. And the mentorship, obviously the job and the business model and the strategy was then lining up to help give you these wings to fly. Tell me about the last year of digital nomad-ish.
Yeah. What's wild is I wasn't a digital nomad. I wasn't location independent until like when I was going to travel the world, which was with an ex-partner in 2020, which LOL, that didn't happen. I was a photographer still. And I was actually working on building a stock photography company that would make me residual income so I could travel. I was working on maybe photographing retreats around the world. I knew I would have to hustle wherever I was to try to get shoots. I'm actually rooming right now with one of my clients and friends. She just shot the retreat I hosted in Greece. She's still a photographer. Like she's not technically location independent, right? She can choose where she wants to be, but she has to find work wherever she goes. So that was my plan. I don't want to paint the picture that because I can be on my laptop on Zoom all day, that's the only way you can also travel the world. You can do it as a photographer, as a designer would be easier, to be honest. But yeah, so that happened. We were planning on traveling the world 2020. I don't know if anyone's heard of the company Remote Year. We had a little stint with them that was going to be in Asia in fall of 2020. That obviously all fell through. And then proceeded into this life of moving to Denver. I didn't really want to be there, but it was just the next step with my partner. We were about to buy a house. We were about to get engaged. And that was going to be my life. And I was like, okay, because I'm pretty flexible. I'm like, I can be happy in whatever, as long as it's not totally unaligned. And then that all imploded and we broke up after 6 years. And I was like, I'm out. I'm chasing this dream. This is my shot. So that's when I started going nomadic. And it just was so wild because it was even like, I was saving up for a house and the universe was like, no, this isn't for a house. This is, you'll see what this is. And we had month to month rent and I was able to leave when I needed to leave. It was just a lot that just lined up as it always does. So then I went nomadic and we've just been traveling ever since. We, meaning me, myself, and I have a storage unit in Colorado and I work my best to try to make calls not at midnight. And I've been all over the world. So that's that in a nutshell.
And what would you say is I have a similar unraveling story, meant to be married at 26, didn't happen. And what do we do? And I think somebody at my work at the time said, why do women always just go to the other side of the world when, shit hits the fan? And I'm like, because it's the farthest I can get. And I've always wanted to go. So I'm off.
Yeah. Absolutely.
The ring, and that was like my plane ticket out. But it clearly there's like the picture perfect digital nomad perception, and then there's the reality. Like, what's the hardest part of working on the road?
Working on the road, I think business is such a personal development journey. I think being an entrepreneur is the most spiritual journey you could go on, truly. If you're not up for the personal development part of it, don't do it. Then add nomadic life on top of that alone. That is like layer upon layer. And if you're not willing to do the work, if you're not willing to look at yourself, go inward, it's going to be a hard thing to do. So I think the hardest thing has been being alone and then also making connections and then ripping those away because I'm leaving again and that type of thing. So it's not even about the business, but it's about staying grounded so that I can be in my business in an aligned way, because everything as an entrepreneur, especially a personal brand like we are, is related to us. So if we're not good, our launch isn't going to go well. Our clients can feel it. Our energy's not there on Instagram, all of the above. So I think it's about really the grounding and the just staying present with yourself and keeping all the things floating, the business and you're eating lunch and like the logistics of the ferry to the South Island in New Zealand, plus the Airbnb and just all of it. So there's a lot of things. Living in a suitcase, out of a suitcase is such a big thing, but it's like, if it feels good, it's not for everybody.
Would you say all of the pros, all of the good stuff outweighs all of that stuff?
Yeah. And honestly, I'm one of those people. I think there's people who become the victims of their situation, and there's people who alchemize it. So one situation to one person might look totally different to someone else, even though it's the same quote unquote problem. Yeah. And so I would actually say the problems, the negatives are actually good as well, because I'm on a journey. I'm not here for this to be fluffy. I'm here to dig in and go for it and see the world and find myself at a deeper level and be 33 and single. Like, what a blessing. How cool I get to show up in the world at this point in my life in that way. Yes, it's all worth it. For sure. There's seeing the world, meeting new people, experiencing the cultures. It's all worth it, but the bad parts are worth it too, you know?
Yeah, they really make you what you are. And you come across as being energetic and colorful and vibrant, but you also are really good at sharing the vulnerabilities and sharing the reality, and it not always just being sunny days in Greece.
Yeah.
And that does mirror what entrepreneurship is like. Like, it's up and down, it's up and down. Some people, and then add, you got this coming 40 plus hormones on top of that, and kids and all these other things that a lot of my community have in their world. I practice and I preach a lot of the need to obviously put ourselves first, and like that self first embodiment that allows us to be able to show up, not just physical energy, but just the mental energy, and ride those waves. And for a long time, I went to what I knew, which was strategy, like just shove strategy down your throat without peeling back the layers of the need to regulate our nervous systems. Really, like you said, listen to yourself and get to know yourself. What do you do do you practice things? Is it just an ongoing thing? Do you have rituals? What's your vibe when it comes to energetic practices for, let's say, nervous system regulation?
Yeah. It's so true. I'm so in a mode actually right now, even in the mastermind that I'm in, where strategy has been shoved down my throat. And if anything, it's showing me that's the exact opposite of what I want. And I'm always like, what about just asking like how we want to feel in our business? And then there's strategy behind that, of course. Yeah. So
such an expansive question. How do you want to feel? I had a client the other day, sorry to interrupt, but we were talking about a program, and I said, how do you want to feel when having this program? She was like, how do I want to feel? Like, she thought we were going to talk pricing and talk this and talk that. And I was like, we go to that's an aligned program. That's a program that, that really is grounded in who you are, as opposed to it being priced at the right, amount.
Yeah. Going back to, we'll get back to your question, but I think like your 0 wasted days, for example, why are we doing it if it doesn't feel good? Like, why would we not just, and I'm going to say there's so many jobs we could do even remotely.
Yeah.
Or businesses we could create just to fill a hole in the market, but we choose to do something that lights us up. We choose to do something that we're passionate about. So why would we not also align that like with how we feel, how we want to feel, our energetics, instead of just strategy our way through it? What a grind. Instead of just being in it and being like, holy shit, this is epic and this feels good and it's spacious. And even when it's not, being like, this is still worth it. The bad is worth it.
Yeah. And it's because we're so conditioned, right? We're so conditioned to that success, that the metrics, those KPIs, the shit
quarter one, quarter two.
Yeah, totally. And yes, there's a place for all of that. We need to do that. And numbers can help you rise energetically and all that kind of stuff. But when it's just, it's exhausting.
Yeah. I've just started going, truly, I'm getting more and more woo as we go, but I'm just like, instead of quarter one, I'm like, how does Aquarius season go for me?
I like that.
In business? What does that feel like? Yeah. So one of the things that I do, bringing that full circle, is the class. I don't know if you've heard of the class, but oh my God, I would just say like movement, but I am specifically like a class. It just is such a energetic, somatic experience versus it just being a workout.
I asked you about the class a while ago, I think. And then I think because I must have seen it anyway. I didn't pursue that, but
yeah. And I highly recommend one of the things they said. So the 3 women I'm staying with, it's 3 of us total, is so aligned. And I want my whole life to just feel this aligned. And it does. We're doing the class together in the living room in the morning. We have our crystals out, which is part of the routine and the rituals. Just having like space, we all like move into the Airbnb and we get our oracle decks out and our crystals and our journals. And we're doing the class. That's part of it. And I carry really impractical things in my bag. I have 7 books. I refuse to buy. I actually bought a Kindle. I lost it. And I was like, great, done with that life. I need the physical. I need something. I bring tea with me, my matcha, like these things help me create a home wherever I'm at. But one of the things they said in the class yesterday is, if nothing is forever, then how do we show up in that? Like, how does that make it different? And I think that reminds me of the 0 wasted days, because it's, man, this isn't forever. This week isn't forever. Greece isn't forever. This nomad life isn't forever. This business isn't forever. So if we're showing up like it's not forever, how do we show up? Which I think is really beautiful.
Yeah, that's one that gets the brain ticking a little bit.
Yeah.
You work specifically with people we call creatives. And whilst we don't all identify with being a creative, I think we all are creative, have creativity and creative at heart. And I really believe that the more that we lean into play and creativity and making space to do this, the more joy and abundance and happiness and that vibrational essence that comes from us is at its peak and needs to be where it's at. How would you suggest for, I guess, others that say that they're not really creative to blend more of this into their lives?
Yeah. How I define a creative entrepreneur, first of all, is if you have a heart-centered gift that you're wanting to make into a business. So creative entrepreneur. And that just leads itself to a lot of things in common with each other, because we're putting something out there that we are passionate about and we're trying to put a price tag on it. And that can get really sticky. And you can imagine where that leads, right? So that's the gist of how I define a creative entrepreneur. So you could be a real estate agent and be a creative entrepreneur. If you're like heart-led, soul-led, you really care about your clients and their story and your personal brand, that's a creative entrepreneur. Or it could be a photographer, a metalsmith, a cartographer, a Reiki healer, a coach, whatever that looks like. Yeah. But I think the people who think they're not creative, we're humans. Like we're all creative. We're all creating everything. We're creating our days. We're creating our lives. We're choosing which restaurant to eat at. We're doing a lot of creative things. Actually, on my podcast, which is called Pollen, it's all about the life winding story of people. And I ask people, what does creativity mean to you? Yeah. And it's so different across the board, which is so fun. But yeah, it's pretty simple. Like we all are creative. We're all creating things in this life.
Yeah. And I'd say when people ask me why I left the agency, I was running the ad agency, and I guess I wasn't giving myself the chance to be creative. So when you're just looking at a lot of spreadsheets and people managing a heck of a lot running a company, I went on to run another company, but it allowed me to be really so much more creative. And a part of me just completely blossomed. It's like going back to your younger self. And it's just something that you've kept for a long time. But I was watching, my kids like watching MasterChef. We were watching MasterChef Australia, and they did the whole link to Australia. And there was a girl on there last night, and she was a Harvard and Stanford economic researcher. And she presented the most creative, beautiful piece of art, which was her meal that she made. And you could see that there was this, even for someone who was in this role that was, so you would say, not creative, there is this side that I think once you allow yourself to let it shine through, the other part will shine even more, the bit that you would associate to being more non-creative.
Yeah, I think it's so important to get back into our creativity, and it's something to do with the unknown. Creativity can't really happen if there's not an unknown component. And I think it's just about play. Like, it doesn't have to be that complicated. Like, what we all were creative as kids, like the things that we suppress now, like what did we do as kids? I even thought about buying a paint by number the other day. I was like, we should do more of this. I want more hands on. We're really losing that. And I think, one of the big things with the retreats is just getting to put your freaking laptop away for a week and just be and play and let yourself loose.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm going to ask you about the retreats in a second, but it just jogged my memory. When I left the agency, I went on to create a creative business. I had a retail concept store in Melbourne. It was a retail store, but we also ran a whole series of classes for kids. So the kids and moms would come in, or nannies or whoever, and run classes. But it was so interesting to watch and they were like before school age. So like 1 to 5. The moms and like the women like us would come in and want the kid to like, what are we making today? And look at the outcome, right? We were like, okay, it needs to look like that. It needs to have, it was Christmas, whatever. It needs to look like that. Then the kid would just like, make this whatever.
Yeah.
And the teacher was constantly trying to say it's process-based art. It's about what they're gaining here in the half an hour. Don't worry about the outcome. But all the women and all the moms were, and this is the way we are. Like we are like, this is how it needs to be. It needs to fit that square.
Yep.
And these little 1 and 2 and 3-year-olds were just making it, and they're like, this is the best thing. And so it was just such a reflection on exactly the way we are when it comes to creativity and trying to fit into that box. It was really interesting.
Yeah.
It just jogged my memory.
Yeah, as soon as we started to have to pay bills, we like lost it. We're like, it must be nice to be a kid. And maybe we should go make a mud pie.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's so good for them. And even in this French school system here, like there's like the square box. And if you don't fit into that box, like more than I've seen in other systems. And that's what I struggle with the most is fitting my boys into the box and allowing them to be continuing to let them get educated, but allowing them to see that if they don't fit, it's also okay.
Yeah. Love that.
And tell me more about the retreat. So you've just had how many women for how long, and how important is it that we we're looking at next year, 2024, and I'm personally putting trips in, and I'm a big person, travel and adventure for me is everything. And so I'm always circulating my whole life around where I'm going next year. Why are retreats such a powerful way to help people disconnect and get reconnected?
Oh my gosh, they are just truly the best. They're the best. I love going on them. I love hosting them. This was my second one that I ever hosted, my first international, because I'm from Colorado, and there were 12 people total, which includes, what's really cool about my community is the photographer is my client, the videographer is my client, the wellness facilitator is my client, often the chef is my client. So it's like this big fun collaboration. We hosted it in Lefkada, Greece. It was truly magical. The first one I did was in Colorado in Steamboat Springs. That was also magical. And I mean it when I say it, like I'm baffled at how good it was. Like no drama, no hiccups. Again, I think it's like, can the bad stuff be good? Also, like there's going to be things like we had a peanut allergy situation this first day. Scary, like hospital style. And it still was good. We all supported each other. Everyone handled it so well. We kept the vibes going, and we just went on and integrated it. Not that there can't be hiccups, but it was truly magical. And the community I cultivate somehow is my superpower. I don't know how it happens, but the women in this space is that they're just incredible. I think the most special thing is that you're coming together in a foreign country. Many of them had never been to Greece before. They're traveling really far to get there. It's Athens, then like a 5-hour shuttle. And you're just so present. Like you're in this beautiful bubble for 6 days with 12 women, eating together, moving together, rooming together, adventuring together, experiencing new culture together. And it just truly gives a vessel to fill your cup with. I think it's so important, especially in this digital age, especially post-pandemic, even though what are we even in? But the Zoom, we gotta get in person is incredible, but being in person for that length of time is just unmatched. It's unmatched.
Yes. Yeah. And it's even like when you go away, like for the weekend, you're like, oh, I need to do that more often. It's that, but on steroids, right? Like it's, and when it's just you, and women put themselves, we know this, but women put themselves last in their families. And, oh, we can't do that because we've been wanting to go to Europe with my whole family for years. Okay, you can still do that. The number of times I actually piggybacked family trips off the back of like work conferences and things like that. You need to just think outside the box, and also just think about the fact that, have you ever asked the question? And my husband's always on board. If I'm like, okay, I think I'm going to do this. He's like, okay, honey, whatever. And you just got to make the ask. You got to ask before actually shutting it down in your mind. And sometimes I think it's best to put yourself first in all these scenarios. And then, because the more that you're going to serve yourself, the more your business is going to get served, the more that everybody else is going to get served.
Yeah. And we were talking about that. We had this boat ride that was incredible. It was like everyone's favorite thing. And I loved it because it was this old wooden boat, like a big ship kind of thing. It was still like fancy, but wooden.
Yeah.
And it felt so much better to me than like a yacht. There's nothing wrong with a yacht. It's just not my vibe.
Yeah.
And I feel like there's so much content on Instagram of like popping champagne on the yacht and we're making 7 figures and all of stuff. And I just don't resonate with it. And that's like my own cross to bear and my own stuff. But something that came up there was, we're not just like indulging here. We're not just doing it because we can. We're doing it so that we can be fulfilled and good, so we can go out in the world and do the things we know how to do, help the people we know how to help. If we don't have this cup full, and tap back into our creativity. Actually, the theme of the retreat was creativity and play. And what's funny is most people came because they wanted business strategy. And that's not what they got. The strategy was the mindset and the connection to self, and figuring out what you want this dream life to look like, and thinking outside the box and getting creative. So they all knew at the end, they were like, got not what I thought I was going to get, but it was amazing.
But I bet you their strategies are shit hot now that are coming out of there, and the creativity and the action that they're taking would be on fire.
Yes, exactly.
And one of the things you do help people a lot with is helping people find clients. And it's also one of the biggest struggles for women in entrepreneurship. And I would love to know what your take is, and probably multifaceted. You could do a whole hour or longer just on this. What would you say are your top tips? If you were doing a session, a strategy session during the retreat on finding clients to help them take away, what would that include?
Yeah, I would say, first of all, always lead with connection. Always. Connection over transaction. Like when you're DMing someone, we've all had those DMs where we just know someone's going to sell to us in about 20 questions later. They're like, hey, how long have you been traveling? And you're like, I don't even know who you are. Instead of just saying, hi, I'm a human and I found you via this person. We should connect. And not going, maybe this could be a client. Because we're grasping. So leading with connection always. Just for example, Camp Clarity is a program that I run for creative entrepreneurs, like a 90-day foundation, everything in business foundational program. And one of them I met in Australia at a creative event, and I wasn't trying to get her as a client, but she resonated with me, and I opened the door. I was like, let's connect on Instagram. Let's keep in touch. And we actually did, and really leading with that connection instead of, I think a lot of us, we're not open enough. We have to like open ourselves. That's another thing that solo traveling will do, because you don't have someone with you to buffer. It's like you're on your own. Finding clients, there's strategic things too around, is your SEO working for you? Are all the tools on Instagram like working for you? Are you doing them quote unquote or aligned where whatever? I think another thing is letting them get to know you. We've all heard the no trust thing. It's so real. People, if you're a wedding photographer, you're just another wedding photographer until you're you, until you let the people know who you are, and you give them a reason to want to work with you versus just you take good photos. So that's a big part of it too. I look at social as in meet people in a bar, meet people at a restaurant. It might be YouTube, it might be TikTok, it might be Instagram too, but how do you interact with people in general in life? And how does that translate to being online? And then just gathering the evidence. Like, how have you gotten clients in the past? Even if it was one, was it word of mouth? Okay, tap into that, reach out to people, tell them you have openings for clients. Was it at a networking event? Was it from Facebook ads, which aren't my favorite, but if that works for you, like amazing. So gather the evidence and go back to what works. So we stoke that fire, keep that burning, and we get to build little new fires over here that eventually will be big bonfires as well.
Yeah, love all of that. It's all what I preach. And I think it's testament. I would also love to know what your human design is.
Yeah.
Is there something that's
generator?
Okay. And what line?
Line is in like the numbers. I'm a 6-3.
6-3. So I'm a 4-6. The network.
My thing says the responsible adventurer.
Oh, because I know networking is a massive thing for me, like making connections through the networking and just meeting people. And it's literally how I find through somebody else. Or it's not like that. It's not sliding into someone's DMs. It's literally getting to know people. And so I think it's interesting when you can, and sometimes people go too far, I think, on the human design thing to say, I'm going to live and die by everything that's in human design. And I don't believe in that either. But I think there's some little clues that can also help us know how we best respond or react to things.
I agree. Totally.
And so the responsible adventurer is perfect segue into my last question, which is all around one of my values, which I already mentioned earlier, which was spirit of adventure. And I would love to know, which obviously I know is whether it's a true value of yours or just something that you live out, what adventure means to you, and where your favorite place has been and where you still have to go as a bucket list place to visit.
Yeah, I love this question. I think adventure to me means a lot of things, but one of them being like living out your version of life versus the latter, versus if the picket fence is your bag, that's cool. It's not mine. And I don't ever want to be in that box like we were talking about. I want to be, adventure is like coloring outside the lines and seeing what happens. Yeah. I've never been a person to fall in line. And I thank my family for that because they never made me be that way. So I love that you're letting your boys like express themselves and explore that creativity. And adventure just means like maybe even not having to know, going into something and not knowing what it's going to be like, not having to know the outcome. And it can be like literally going and hiking to the top of a mountain, but you don't know what the outcome of that is always either. So
pushing people back so much, right?
Yeah. The unknown. Adventure is the unknown. We'll just leave it at that.
Totally.
New Zealand has been one of my favorite places for sure. That was a place that I went to Australia last November. I figured may as well go to New Zealand. I'm right here. It's been on my list, but then I talked myself out of it. I wasn't going to go. I thought I should have a partner to go with, or at least a friend. I didn't want to hike mountains and be alone. And I ended up going. The universe was like, nope, you're doing that. And hiking mountains by myself was one of the most magical experiences I've ever experienced. So it was such an inward journey. Even just, like I said, getting my car across the ferry to the South Island was like an adventure. And I was like, I got this, driving on the left side of the road, all of it, doing things that like make you feel alive.
Yes.
So
doing things that make you feel alive. Yes.
Yeah. So that's my favorite. I'm going to Copenhagen next. And then a few wrenches, if you will, have thrown my plans just into a different direction. So I'm rolling with that. I thought I was going to be done nomading by like July, which is hilarious to me now. So I think it's definitely going to be 2024 when I don't know. I have no idea where I want to land. I do want to land somewhere, preferably in Europe or in Australia or New Zealand. But I really want to go to Amsterdam and London for at least a month each before I'm done with this journey. Cause I feel like those are two places maybe I could live. I'm such a lover of New York. I feel like London might be a good spot, but I'm feeling Amsterdam is really maybe it. So I want to go.
I can't say it's high up on my list. And I'm like, I need to go to Amsterdam. I need to, and my dad's Dutch. So I have a longing. I've been in Holland before, but never to actually Amsterdam. Yeah. I can see why that is on your list. So exciting. Listen, Diana, I really appreciate you having this conversation and taking the time in your what is still a busy schedule and juggling logistics and Airbnbs and all that kind of stuff. I appreciate that you've taken the time, and I look forward to us staying connected. You'll have to go, and I was thinking when you were talking about climbing mountains, my interview that I did with Sarah Schulting-Krantz in Zero Wasted Days, it was my last interview. You got to go and listen to her episode. So she takes women on retreats in the Grand Canyon and in Alaska and all over the place. And she's a massive hike to the top of the mountain in the middle of the night kind of woman. So there's lots of stuff there. I think that if you loved that you'll also be inspired by.
That's definitely calling to me. I love that. Thank you.
Awesome. I can't wait to. Yeah, and I can't wait to follow your journey, continue to watch on stories and be inspired, and then be totally envious when you're back in Australia again, like I was the last time.
Oh my gosh, we might cross paths. You never know.
You never know. You never know. All right. Thank you for joining me for this week's episode of Zero Wasted Days. I truly hope that you found it to be valuable and inspirational as you create and you grow your own business and work towards living more life first. I would love you to subscribe, to like this video, and of course, if you have any comments, drop them in here below. Also, if you tag me on socials, I would love to get to know you. I love connecting with my audience, so be sure to tag me at Suzanne Actison or at @ZeroWastedDays_, and I will see you inside the DMs as well as here for the next episode next week.